Welcome to the Veterans in Politics Talk Show. Join us every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, live stream on Facebook. Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanchez, Stephanie Phillips with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today, we decided to do a show on a Monday. We're taking Wednesday off, so that's why we're on today. But our guest today is Austin Beaumont for Clark County District Court, Department 8. But before we get to Mr. Beaumont, Ms. Phillips.
Thanks for joining us, everybody, and thank you to our sponsors. We have Tim Ross over at the North Las Vegas Hangars Association, and if you would like to know more about what they do and advocate for, his website is vgthog.org, vgthog.org, and we also have Henderson's mayor, Michelle Romero, who won her primary election. Great job, Michelle. Her website is votemichelleromero.com, votemichelleromero.com. And we also have Judge Jennifer Schwartz. She is running for re-election for Department 17. Her website is judgeschwartz.com, judgeschwartz.com. Also, don't forget to grab a copy of Steve's book, How to Navigate Nevada's Family Court System. You can get a copy on Amazon. It is $14.99. And if you are a family court litigant and you don't have an attorney or you can't afford one, grab a copy of this book. It's a self-help book and it will help you navigate that system. Also, we have a merch store. It's vipimerch.com, vipimerch.com. There's all kinds of fun things for you to check out there. And also, I just wanted to mention yesterday was Flag Day and also the United States Army's birthday, 251 years.
Booyah.
There we go. So happy birthday, Army, go Army, and thank you for your service. Also today, I wanted to mention, it is heartbreaking. There was a B-52H aircraft that crashed out at Edwards Air Force Base this morning. I don't think any of the crew survived, and I just wanted to give our sincerest condolences to their families. And as we get more information on that, that was terrible. So I just wanted to mention that. And I don't think I have a rant today.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the world coming to, Ms. Phillips?
Well, I don't know. There's,
Cat got your tongue?
there's some people out there that need to have a rant, but we'll sit on that for a bit.
Okay. Nothing, you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Not even when we start talking to Mr. Beaumont?
Mm-hmm.
And something's not going to come to mind?
Well, I might, if it comes to mind, then yeah.
Okay. All right. Mr. Beaumont.
Hi.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Could you give us a bio, please?
Bio. So legally, I am a prosecutor. For a legal bio, I'm a prosecutor with the Clark County District Attorney's Office. I work in the major fraud unit. I've been there for several years. Prior to being in the prosecutor's office, I was a law clerk for the district court. I worked for judges Carrie Early and Stephanie Miley.
Know those two.
Prior to that, I went to law school in the University of Idaho up in Moscow, Idaho. Prior to that, I ran hotels. I worked my way up from being a culinary worker, mostly conventions and banquets and so on. Put myself through undergrad doing that, and then I ran a couple hotels in the Seattle and Portland area. I got to a point where I kind of hit a glass ceiling of, hey, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Or do I think I can do something more in service of other people? And just felt the call to serve. And that's what led me to going back to school and went to law school. So that's just kind of the, in a nutshell.
Wow. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
Where'd you grow up?
So all over the place.
Okay.
Are you a brat?
So kind of.
Military brat.
Engineer brat. I moved around with a bunch of different folks. My father was an engineer with the telephone companies, and we would work from contract to contract, place to place. We'd normally move to one central location, and then he would move in small moves around there, and we'd pick up and move again. And most of the time it was rural areas, because back in the late 80s and early 90s, there were still towns without landline telephone service. So he'd be going in and setting up all those phone service systems, and then we would move on to the next place. So we didn't settle down until I was 13. when we moved to Colorado, we bought a ranch out there. I became a ranch kid. And then my father unfortunately passed at 15.
How old was he when he passed?
He was 41.
Oh, that's very young.
Very, very young.
What took him?
Melanoma.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah,
sorry.
it's something that he'd been battling ever since he was 17, actually. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was something that he'd been going through for a long time. And one of the things that he would talk about when we were moving from place to place is how he always wanted to have his own restaurant or have like a service type place so we wouldn't have to keep moving around everywhere. So after he passed, I went to kind of follow in the footsteps that he wanted, which was going into the restaurant and hotel industry and, serving others. First, I tried to get into the military because my Navy originally. So my older brothers are both vets. My younger brother's a vet.
How many brothers you have? Or siblings you have, by the way?
So I have 2 older half brothers. I have 1 whole brother and a quarter sister.
Oh, wow. There's a lot of change going on.
Yeah, a lot of change. So,
I didn't know there was a quarter.
well, my half brothers have a half sister, so just
Yes.
Oh, okay.
fractions.
All right.
Fractions. Math problem.
It's math. So Matt originally went into the service, and he was 82nd Airborne. Matt and Josh are identical twins. Mm-hmm. Josh went into the Navy. He did 4 years, and then left and started his own company making custom holsters for law enforcement and things like that.
Okay.
So he moved to Colorado, had that business for a good long time. I went in, tried to go Navy. I had some physical issues, so I wasn't qualified just from that issue. Okay. And then my brother went to Navy. I gave it a shot. I was at MEPS for almost a year, going back and forth and back and forth. But my brother went in. He went in the Navy. He was aviation ordnanceman. Left the Navy, transferred to the Air Force, and then transferred to the National Guard right before he retired. And now he's off in Kuwait doing civilian contracting.
Wow.
Kuwait's nice.
Yeah, so he really likes it.
It wasn't nice when I was there, but it's nice.
He loves it. He says he doesn't have any interest in moving back to the States. He loves it over there.
That nice.
He's really made his way over there. He's really happy.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. So it's nice having, all the brothers and all the family just, doing the service thing.
So let's get right to it.
Sure.
Why would you want to run against an incumbent, especially in this political atmosphere, a female judge? Why would you want to run against a female judge?
So
in this political climate.
So I think political climate aside, ultimately the judgeship is a job. Mm-hmm. It's not like politics, and no shade to politicians, but it's a job that requires a lot of work. It's not much different than, someone who's performing surgery or someone who is working on your transmission. It's a real job. So politics most of the time, especially for district court, really doesn't factor into the job itself. So as a practicing trial attorney, as someone who litigates 4 out of every 5 days at minimum in the district court, I want the best judges possible. We're all trying to get the best legal result possible. We're trying to do the best for the community that we can. So when I see a department that's having a lot of issues from discretionary standpoints or legal standpoints, it harms the profession overall. So male, female, whatever, if you're not doing a good job at your job, I think you deserve to be held accountable and to be challenged and do better. And I think that if you can do better and you have the ability to do so, then you have the duty to do so. And that's a lot of what's pushed me forward in my separate careers is I feel that I have the ability to do better. And because of that, I feel like I now must, go forward with that.
So what is the incumbent doing that she's not doing her job?
So there are a number of different issues. One of the easiest ways to sum it up is by looking at the review journals, judging the judges' surveys. That's not the review journal going in and judging the judges on their own. It's surveys given to attorneys who practice in front of those specific judges, and they're graded on, I don't remember how many, it must have been 100 different questions of how does this judge handle X issues? What's their demeanor? Do they prepare? Are they showing clear bias to one party or another? And this judge scored particularly low on a number of different areas, but the 2 biggest ones were ability to accurately apply the law and the judicial temperament issues. That's what we're seeing overall is this department often either does not, cannot, or will not follow the law on certain issues.
Do you have examples of those two issues?
Very good example is the recent trial regarding the chasing horse trial.
Okay.
The Review Journal, again, was in front of the court for covering media, very common. The judge issued an order that was facially violative of the First Amendment, and the Review Journal called her out on it and said, look, you can't do this. This is against the First Amendment of the Constitution. This is day one constitutional law. So being called out, the court retracted the order. Okay, we're not going to kick you out of the courtroom because it is against the First Amendment.
Isn't that because of the Supreme Court weighed in on that?
Well, this
Or
was prior.
Oh, but that she voluntarily pulled that order back. Is that how that
Voluntarily,
happened?
yes.
Oh, okay.
After
All
being
right.
challenged, not providing any sort of real legal basis for the order. Okay, well, let's pull that order back. It is facially unconstitutional. We're not going to issue it. About a week later, the court decided that they're going to issue the order again and remove the Review Journal from the courtroom. So what we're in is a position where you know that something is against the Constitution. You know that it's violative of any number of different settled cases on an issue, and you do it anyway.
Did you get the Review Journal's endorsement?
It's not something that's up yet. It's something that's coming along later in the cycle, is my understanding of the process.
Okay.
So when we're looking at that from a constitutional law standpoint, it went to the Supreme Court and they issued an opinion in one day. And I don't know if that's ever happened before.
Not really.
When something is
6 months.
so blatantly and facially unconstitutional, that's both the canary in the coal mine and the tornado warning siren as far as problems with understanding and applying the law.
Okay.
So that you only get there if you're intentionally ignoring it or if you can't really work through legal analysis. And either way, it's the same problem. The law is the law, and how you feel about a particular entity should have really no impact on the legal decisions that you're creating. The other part is the lack of judicial temperament. And I believe that in the first interview that she and I did with this organization, she admitted to having problems with her temper. There are more than enough opportunities for attorneys to be stressed out or frustrated with the proceeding. There's no reason ever to be yelling at attorneys or raging at people in your courtroom. That's completely unacceptable, just from a professional standpoint, let alone that of a judge. There are judicial canons, there are judicial expectations. You need to be able to control your temper as an adult person, let alone a judge. So that those two central issues bleed their way into the number of reasons why a lot of litigants, a lot of attorneys, civil, criminal, and probate are just tired. It's not something that we should have to put up with, and it dilutes the quality of our bench, and it dilutes public perception of the bench. When you believe that the law is not going to be followed or someone's not going to be consistent, you don't believe in the system. And if the system is letting you down, then the people that have the ability to challenge it should challenge it.
So what do you say to those folks that know that you're a prosecutor, would think that you're going to be more of a hammer into sentencing folks because you're not from the public defense?
Of course.
So what do you say to those people that have that mindset, would think you're going to be more of a hammer than anything else? Like a Judge Mosley. They used to call him the hang 'em judge.
Yeah. So it's actually funny. Judge Mosley has endorsed me for this campaign. But as far as me being a prosecutor, 99% of our negotiations and our cases end up in a plea deal or a plea bargain of some kind. So from the get-go, we are generally the masters of the ultimate resolution of a case. The prosecutors and the defense, we come to a rational conclusion. So I don't know how many tens of thousands of cases I've worked on at this point, but you get a good feel for what is appropriate under the circumstances.
Okay.
You get an idea of, hey, where on the range of incredibly offensive to not offensive is this? What's a realistic goal for this case? And it's not something where I can, according to the canon, say that I'm going to be a tough judge, or I'm going to be a kind judge as far as sentencing goes. the only thing you can really do is say that, look, under every circumstance, I'm going to look at the totality of the circumstances. I'm going to do the very best I can, and I'm going to go to sleep at night knowing that I did what I believe was right.
Okay. Have you ever went ahead and prosecuted somebody that you had evidence to say that they were innocent of that crime?
No, because if there's exculpatory evidence, I do my best to dig it up. I have an ethical duty not to prosecute someone if I believe that there is exculpatory evidence that will explain away the crime.
Explain what that means to the audience.
Of course. So I will get, often in fraud cases, a lot of discovery, lots of documents, contracts, evidence, laptops and phones full of evidence. So you have to comb through that and say, all right, is there something in here that would say that under the circumstances, this person might not be guilty, or this person might even be making it up? Because with fraud, it's a lot of, he said, she said. Mm-hmm. So you have to do that work up front. I can't proceed with a case if I don't think that there's a rational basis for it. So if there's at any point where I was in possession of any exculpatory evidence, then we sit down with the defense and say, hey, look, this is exculpatory. I don't think this case is worth what it's worth. I'm going to dismiss it.
Okay.
And I've made a lot of difficult calls to victims, and I've made a lot of difficult calls to families of victims. And it's tough to say that what happened to you is terrible, or what happened to you is horribly unethical. And maybe you've got a case in civil court for this, but there's no crime here. And it's so hard to hear that. It's so hard to say that because we're wired to want justice when we're wronged.
Street justice.
Yeah, but we don't use the criminal justice system as a sword. We're not
Right.
here to harm people or threaten people with criminal prosecution just because they're bad people.
Gotcha.
Do you think the DA's office makes deals way too much, way too often, and some of these should actually be taken to trial and these people nailed for what they have done? I mean, sometimes I see some of these cases where the DA, they make deals and just way too quickly, easily, it seems like, from the public standpoint anyway. And these people get off so light for what they do.
That's always like I was saying with calling people and having that conversation with them, sometimes cases are negotiated to things that nobody's happy with. Sometimes cases go to trial where we think that someone is guilty beyond any metaphysical doubt, and then the jury finds that they're not guilty. Each case, we do our level best to come to the best possible resolution. The problem is that when we deal with as many cases as we do, I believe last year we had over 36,000 felony cases submitted to our department, and that's not counting misdemeanors. 1 or 2 of those will make the news because they're intense and they're horrible and they're offensive. But then sometimes you get into the actual evidence and what can you prove, and you realize that this is not necessarily something that you might want to take a chance on with the jury. And the defendants see that too. Sometimes the facts come out and say these are really bad facts and we're willing to plead, and sometimes you put it up to a jury. So the system does sound terrible sometimes out of individual cases, but when you look at the entire system as a whole, everyone's just doing the best that they possibly can under the circumstances.
As a judge, you guys have discretion with certain things. You have latitude on sentencing. You've got guidelines, but there's 5 to 10 or 10 to 20, whatever. If you see a deal coming through from the DA's office where, and this was one not too long ago, just egregious, probation for this guy that killed a baby. If you see some kind of terrible deal that you don't think or believe is right in your own moral standards and makeup, will you send that back and tell them to go try again to the attorneys and the DA's office and not take that deal? Because you guys can do that, right? You can tell them to go try again.
Yes, you can. And that's happened to me a couple of times. The judges will sit down and they'll see what comes across to them as the facts of the case by way of the charging documents that's filed. And then they see the resulting deal. And there are far too many questions to answer at that time. And we'll have to go have a conference with the judge and, hey, I don't like this deal. I don't feel comfortable taking this negotiation. I will not accept this plea. And then you go back to the drawing board again. And that's just, it's not common. Generally, the judges trust the judgment of the prosecutors and the defendants, but every now and then there are cases that come in front of judges that they set off red flags. And you have to follow your inner conscience with that. When you feel that there are true red flags with something, you have to be able to pull the trigger and say, I'm not going to accept this guilty plea.
So you're not going to feel pressure from the DA's office that, you have to toe the line or go along with whatever the deal that they've made or anything like that. You will separate that, look at the case independently and not worry about what the DA is going to think if you tell them to go try again.
No, and that's why that's why we have that process of it's not just the prosecutor and the defense attorney coming to a decision and saying, here's what's going to happen. It has to go in front of a judge and the judge has to sign off on that. And if you as a judge say, hey, I don't like this, there are too many red flags, this bothers me on a very deep level, I'm not going to accept the guilty plea, that's part of the judge's job. It doesn't happen often, but there are some times in which the DA's office or the defender's office have submitted a negotiation that is facially offensive. And judges do need to be able to pull the trigger on that sometimes.
So what separates you from other candidates running for district court judge?
So unlike, I believe, any other candidate in this race for district court judge, I'm the only one with real experience behind the district court bench.
And what does that mean, real experience?
So right out of law school, ordinarily folks go right into practice and they start advocating for one side or they advocate for another. And one way or another, that can lead to people being a little bit more friendly towards plaintiffs or a little bit more friendly toward defense or so on, because you shape your way that you see cases in one way or another. I spent 4 years after I graduated law school working behind the bench, looking at things neutrally. I had no horse in the race. What my concern was, what is the right decision? What is the accurate understanding of the law? What is the best possible decision that I could write here? What's going to hold up on appeal? What's the right thing to do? And I saw, again, 4 years of litigation across probate, across civil trials, probate trials, petitions for judicial review, criminal issues, appellate work. All of these things came in front of me personally first. So I would have to break them down, present all the issues to the judge. Here's the recommended ruling. Here's the order that I would submit to your honor. Get some feedback from the judge. But everything that came into the department came through me first as the law clerk for these different departments. So I'm used to seeing how all of this progresses. I'm used to dealing with the attorneys. I started my career off doing this, and that's where I developed my love for this and where I understood the importance of getting it right over and over and over. 30, 40 matters a day for civil issues, hundreds, if not thousands on thousands of criminal cases. The challenge is getting it right and having someone who actually cares and has the experience to understand what getting it right entails. It's a job. So unlike, like I said, any other candidate, I'm the only one who really has been behind the district court bench and seen what makes good judges and what makes bad judges, how to be a good judge and what to avoid bad judgery.
So how would the attorneys describe your temperament in the courtroom?
I get resting dad face is the...
resting dad face.
Resting dad face.
How does that look? Do one.
So you've never really gone off on a judge? Or...
No, I watched some extremely poorly behaved attorneys behave extremely poorly towards other attorneys and towards judges themselves. Like I said, there's no place for that. We're professionals. We're all adults. I don't have any interest in continuing that cycle of generational abuse. That stops. We can be kind. We can get our job done. We can all be collegiate. There are really no reasons to be that hateful towards each other. And I don't really have another word for it because I see attorneys just being hateful towards each other and just mean. I mean, it's an adversarial system, but we don't need to be unprofessional.
Do the judges step in and say, hey, take 5, relax? Or do they just let the attorneys go at it?
I've
Depends
seen
on the judge.
I've seen that. I've seen judges literally stand over the bench and scream at opposing counsels. It gets heated. There are a lot of feelings involved when you're litigating, and like I said, I just don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that there's any reason to be losing your temper like that to your coworkers and your peers and your contemporaries. I think that reflects very poorly on anyone in any position, let alone a judge.
So what's the proper role of a judge versus a prosecutor?
Ooh, gosh.
How does those two mesh?
So the prosecutor's job, in my estimation, is to present the facts of the case to either the judge or the jury to achieve justice. The judge is there to make sure that the law is being followed. The problem that we see with some judges is that they can't put away their advocacy role, and they try to get a little too involved in the outcome of the case, and they get a little too involved in how the prosecution or the defense or the plaintiffs. Exactly. It's judicial activism, however you label it. You are not there to get to a conclusion. You are there to apply the law as it's written and to use your discretion in the best possible way that you can. When you start advocating for a result, you are engaging in judicial activism no matter what. And that is something that, as a practitioner, it's a pet peeve of mine. As a citizen, I don't enjoy watching judges try to legislate. If you want to change the law, be a private citizen and change the law. There's absolutely remedies for that if that's what you want to engage in. Be a legislator. Run for Senate, run for Assembly, whatever it is you want to do in that role, but not from the bench. There's a respect that you have to have for that neutral and detached nature of the role.
Had you ever had to disagree with a law but had to enforce it? And how would you handle that as a judge?
Yes.
I'd like to know what law you disagree with too.
So there are, gosh, how to sum this one up?
Can you say that?
But would that put you on the spot? Because
Well, he's under judicial canon, so
you probably can't say it.
I think I could be vague about it.
Okay.
I've disagreed. I've disagreed with a judge on how a law was interpreted. And I believed in a very different interpretation of that law. The judge believed in their way. So as a prosecutor, you have to do what the law is. It gets very complicated in how you believe a law should or should not be enforced, especially as a prosecutor where we're under certain duties, and as a judge where they're under certain duties. It's very, very complicated. But as a citizen, we all believe that some laws are fair and some are unfair. But part of being a prosecutor, part of being a judge is saying, look, whether I agree with this or not, it's not up to me to act on that. It's on me to enforce the law. It's on me to carry out justice. It's on me to do the right thing, regardless of how I feel. So that's really, I think, the best way that I could answer that is, regardless of how you feel about the law, you follow the law as it's written and not the way that you want it to be written.
Okay, that's good. As a prosecutor, what is your biggest regret?
Biggest regret?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh. I don't think that I could think of any regrets as a prosecutor. And I don't mean to sound glib about it, but I enjoy my job. I enjoy litigating. I enjoy doing what I believe is the right thing in all these different cases. I try to go through every case as though it was my first and do justice to all the victims and the defendants involved. It's a great job. I don't really feel like I have a lot of regrets.
Let me help you then.
Sure.
Have you ever prosecuted a case that was later dismissed or overturned?
Oh, yes. Later dismissed. I've started out, without trying to get too specific into the facts, I started out with a case that I was given where all the facts pointed to absolute guilt beyond reasonable doubt. And then a week before the trial was to go, I got one piece of evidence from the defendant that completely changed my entire way that I viewed the case. One single piece of evidence that I had not been aware of, that none of us had been aware of until that very day. So I had to stop, go back to the drawing board with this piece of evidence in mind and look at it under that perspective. And within 24 hours, I dismissed the case, because there are some times that little pieces of information change everything. And you have to be able to change your mind about things and not have any sort of personal stake in it, because that's justice.
The bench you're going for, is it a dual, or is it just civil, or just criminal?
It is currently a civil, criminal, and probate 3-way split.
And probate.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So what reforms, if any, are needed in Nevada's criminal justice system?
I'd struggle to say reforms necessarily, beyond making sure that the judges that are prosecuting that the judges that are overseeing criminal cases have real criminal experience to some extent. There are civil judges who move their way into criminal and do great.
You're not going to tell a plumber to come and do your electrical work, right?
Right, exactly. You want to make sure that the person who's sitting up there on the bench has some sort of frame of reference as a practicing attorney. Because, I mean, I can tell you what a hamburger is, but I couldn't tell you how to make it. I mean, I'm not a hamburger expert, and I wouldn't want to have, me in charge of a transmission shop or something. And I go with transmissions because transmissions are basically magic. But I don't know enough about that to sit in judgment of other people who are doing that work. So if you are an attorney who doesn't really have much experience in criminal law, maybe take a step back and say, is this something that I need to be learning on the fly? Because these are constitutional rights, these are liberty interests, and these are the things that the Supreme Court takes most seriously, because the overwhelming majority of criminal cases are appealed, and they are constantly up in front of the Supreme Court. And if you don't really have that base of knowledge, you're doing a disservice to all of the people that practice in front of you, the people that are accused of crimes, and the victims who are seeking justice for their crimes. You want someone up there to say, hey, you know what? I've been there in this position. I understand what you're going through. If you don't really have that life experience or that practice experience, I think you're doing the entire bench a disservice.
Don't you think it should be a requirement when you do run for a bench or a seat like that? If it's criminal, you have to have a certain number of years in criminal law. I think that maybe they need to change that.
There was a movement, I believe the Supreme Court or another group had talked about increasing the number of actual jury trials that you've tried prior to becoming a judge in a jury trial department. Again, it goes back to the example of why would you want to be in charge of something that you've never really had any experience doing? If you've only had maybe 100 cases in criminal or in district court over your entire career, why would you want to be a district court judge? Like, I personally wouldn't want to be a family court judge. I know enough to say that I don't know anything about family court, and I wouldn't want to put myself in a position where I'm a judge of something I don't know anything about. This position, however, I've got the experience since day one of leaving law school.
So there's no on-the-job training for you?
No, this is falling back into the same position that I was in. I'm just wearing a black robe now instead of working in the office.
I would like to ask Kevin McMahill this question, but I'm going to ask you. How should judges balance public safety and rehabilitation?
How to balance it? It's an interesting question. So public safety is a very difficult thing to manage because, and I will say this in defense of any judge sitting on the bench, they are given a limited amount of information when they are deciding things like bail. And they're trying to determine what is this person's real risk to the community.
Or electronic monitoring system.
Or electronic monitoring, or any other possibility, or any other issue of holding someone in a way that they can mitigate the risk of harm to the community. And doing that in a way that's not overly restrictive is tough. And judges have to make tough decisions sometimes when they see a case come in where someone's never done anything wrong their whole life, completely clean record, and suddenly there's a very serious issue in front of them. And how do you balance that? How do you say that, sir, I understand that you've never done anything wrong, but these allegations are very serious, and we've got to make sure that you are not a risk to others. So it's so hard because you have to do the best with what you're given. And you have to be able to say, you know what, this is the decision I'm making, and this is why I'm making it, and I believe it's the right thing to do. Getting into a habit of saying, well, it's $1 million bail for every defendant, or no bail for every defendant. You're just pushing yourself to one extreme, and you're kind of just pushing a narrative there. You have to be able to sit and break it down. These are the reasons why, so that when someone looks at your reasoning, they would agree with, hey, you know what, maybe I wouldn't have got to the same result, but I understand why you got there.
So Clark County courts, they often face delays. What would you do to move cases faster?
Same thing we did when I was a district court clerk. So,
Guilty.
oh no, no.
10 to 20.
So for civil cases specifically, we had a lot of struggles pre-COVID with everyone who would come into the court for the day of the hearing, and they would sit there all day while we went through everyone else's issues and so on. And that's terrible for everyone. You're building your clients, it's costing money, it's costing time. As a civil judge, if you can look forward 2 weeks in advance and say, hey, what do we have coming up in 2 weeks? Let's start on that now. And you work ahead, you'll find that about 90% of what comes into the court are things that you can determine easily and issue an order for ahead of time and say, hey, you know what, parties, the court's already issued an order. There's no need to come in. Save you all time and energy. Here we go. That gives you the time to spend more of your time on the 10% of the cases that require the argument, that require that time in court, that gives you that opportunity to drill down to the different cases, drill down to the different issues, get everybody on the same page. So you're doing more service to everyone by working ahead. The same thing goes to criminal to an extent. There are a lot of hearings that require in-court arguments, and so there's only so much you can work ahead as far as that goes. But being decisive, we are struggling as prosecutors and defendants to get cases done or to get our calendar for the day done in under several hours. There are just so many cases. There's so many judges. We are being inundated with an extraordinary caseload. So the most you can really do is work ahead and be cognizant and respectful of everybody else's time.
So how would you reduce unnecessary continuance?
So that's, again, something on a case-by-case basis.
I hate continuance, by the way.
Oh, of course. There's an understanding or an expectation that the attorneys that are appearing in front of you have prepared. And if you, as a judge, know what goes into preparing these cases for trial, you can also determine whether someone is actually prepared or whether they're not prepared and they're just trying to come up with some issue for a continuance or they're trying to delay the system. You can call it out when you see it. If you don't have that experience, then judges are a little bit more okay with trying to continue everything to appease everyone, trying to make the attorneys happy. Well, you know, so-and-so, I've known you for a long time. Let's go ahead and continue it out a little bit. That's not okay. Our old cases, the cases that are nearing 5 years in our civil courts, it's an absurdly high number. There are so many cases that have just been lagging over and over and over with attorneys who are just failing to prepare and be ready for actually being held accountable. So when it's trial time, it's trial time. We're going to trial. What is your reason that you're not ready? That's not good cause.
It took me 4 years to get to my summary judgment.
Right. Why aren't you ready? How is it 4 years and we're not ready for an MSJ?
So you're not going to be lax with your friends who are attorneys that come before you.
I think that does a disservice to the position.
You're just going to act like you don't know them.
Don't know.
Like,
They're just
never
a blank
seen
face.
you before, don't know you.
No, everyone expects the court to hold them to standards. And when you start letting those standards slip is when they start to be abused. So from the beginning, when you say, these are the rules of my department and I'm going to stick to them, people respect that. And then they work within those guidelines. If they know a judge doesn't hold them to the fire as far as getting these things done in a certain period of time, then they will abuse it. Your court will be the first court that they push everything to the side because they know that Judge so-and-so isn't going to enforce anything. Pushover. Right.
When do you recuse yourself? What's that threshold look like?
When you believe that you can, let's see if I can recite it. When you believe that there would be the appearance of impropriety over your seeing of a case, or believe that you are so biased as to render your judgment non or impartial in some way, then you have an ethical duty to recuse yourself.
So a good friend of yours, family member, something like that.
If it's a good friend, family member, if you don't believe that there's an honest basis for or believing that you're going to be impartial, you just put it on the record. Hey, I know so-and-so, we go way back, and do the parties have any issue with me here in this case? Most of the time, the attorneys will say, no, we don't have any issue, and that's no big deal. Or if they do,
Like, how far back do you go?
right. And if you want to delve into it a little bit, oh, well, they've been my contractor on this issue for some time. Oh, okay, well, that's not the worst thing. Well, this is someone who we were in a romantic relationship with.
Oh, that's a problem.
And then
Yeah,
okay,
refocus on that one.
then we're all going to have exactly. That would be somewhere where that would be an obvious thing where you don't want to have that person in your courtroom. So you just have to be as ethical as you possibly can be, and realistically, avoiding the appearance of impropriety, I believe, should be the standard. You don't really want to get in a position where you are making judgment calls that on appeal could be looked at as improper. You're supposed to be beyond reproach as far as your decisions, as far as your use of discretion in any given environment. And to be fair, there are many reasons to recuse off of a case. There's nothing wrong with it. The case gets reassigned to someone else, and another perfectly competent judge will take it, and off they go. I think it just does a disservice if you're fighting to stay on a case just to prove that you're not biased or impartial. But you always have to think of the record. You have to think, well, what is the Supreme Court going to think on appeal? Why did this particular decision go to this person? Why did it go to this person? Is the judge trying to avoid the appearance that they're biased and is overly favoring someone because of it? Those sort of issues really come into play in criminal cases because now, again, we're looking at constitutional issues. Are you being overly harsh on a defendant because you don't want to make it look like you're not favoring the state? So again, it's always case by case, but you just try to do the best you possibly can.
Back in the day, the mainstream media was the only one that had cameras set up in the courtroom. And now a lot of podcasters and people that are involved in the judicial process, like our Nevada judges, they do media requests to come and film in the courtroom. What's your position on cameras in the courtroom?
Courtrooms are public hearings, and they have every right to be there, limited or to the exception of an extremely limited set of circumstances. They're open courts. I mean, we have people who walk into court all the time. They have just as much right to be there as any of the media does, because bundled in the First Amendment rights, it's not just freedom of the press. Freedom of the press is really the freedom of the people. It's the freedom of people to be informed as to what's going on in these hearings. I mean, we're not a gulag. We're not doing these things in a dank dungeon somewhere. These are open proceedings. And as a defendant, you have the right to have your accusers and these issues brought to light so that you're not being, again, railroaded by something. There are so many bundles of rights along with that First Amendment issue. If you start banning our Nevada judges, you start banning the press, you start making these hearings closed, and then suddenly what's going on in these courtrooms? Who's being prosecuted? Who's being convicted of crimes? We have no idea what's happening. So that's, again, why we're going back to that First Amendment issue of everyone has a right to be here. These are all public proceedings. We all have a right to be informed as to what's going on in these courtrooms. And when you're starting to limit access to that, what is your end game? What is the goal of trying to block the press from seeing what's going on in your courtroom? I mean, that begs the question of what is the reason? And
you know what about court observers?
Court observers, like the First Amendment court observers.
To them too, right?
To an extent, absolutely able to watch and see what's going on until it starts being disruptive.
I remember when we were, going into a family court and watching those cases, and back in the day, they used to kick us out, and the case was never closed. There's no reason why they should. So what we do, we go down, we go get the video of that court case, and then we put it all over the place. So now instead of 4 or 5 people watching, now you have 4,000 or 5,000 people watching. And I thought that was the most stupidest thing those judges could ever do, was kick out court observers.
It's the Barbara Streisand effect.
Yeah, I'm like, that's dumb, because we were just going to go in there and watch. We might even not even want to be in there. After 5 minutes, we probably would leave. But the point that they made it a big deal, say they close, you guys can't come in here. We go downstairs and get the video of that case and then put it all over the place. I just thought that was the most stupidest thing, to kick out court observers.
Extremely rare set of circumstances that would require the closing of the court.
And what are those rare circumstances?
Oh, I hesitate to answer that under the canons because it would really indicate
Don't get in trouble.
potentially ruling in a certain position, or that might be in front of me in the future.
Let's table that
We'll
one.
get yelled
Yeah.
at by your consultant.
So, so how can the courts improve public trust?
Oh gosh. So improving public trust is, for example, when you make a legal decision, you need to be able to accurately articulate and reason out why you as a judge are holding something in a certain way. Here's the legal standard. Here's how I believe the facts meet the legal standard or don't. And this is the decision that I'm coming to. When you start making rulings that don't make any sense to anybody, that's starting to take the public trust issue and blow it up, because then you see cases in the media where people are saying, how could a judge possibly have made that decision? How could they have gotten to that conclusion? And usually it's because the logic just doesn't follow. I mean, not everybody is an attorney, but everyone can read and has ears and eyes, and we can understand what's happening with these cases. And when something hits you deeply as this is wrong, this fundamentally bothers me on a deep level. We all have that same reaction to injustice and when things are just facially wrong. So being right about the law is so important. And I think that that's what we as practitioners and as judges owe to people, is that transparency in our analysis and our transparency in our decisions, so that we can go to sleep every night saying, you know what, I did the best possible thing I could. And these are the reasons why I did it. And this is going to hold up. And this is the right thing to do, because the right thing presents itself to you. You know when something's right, you know when something's not right. And if your decisions are continually making people say, this is wrong, you're probably pushing yourself into judicial activism and destroying that public trust.
So I'm going to ask you for your personal opinion.
Oh.
Oh, that's against the canons too.
Oh.
You don't have opinions. They're not allowed to have personal opinions. Oh, gosh.
Should judges be subjected to term limits?
Ooh. I fundamentally don't disagree with the notion of term limits for a number of different reasons in political or judicial appointments. And part of that reason is, at a certain point, we do have to all acknowledge that we get a little older. And sometimes age brings wisdom and maturity and experience, but sometimes we can break down, and sometimes issues become more pronounced medically as we age. And I say this as someone who prosecutes elder abuse and elder exploitation. In Nevada, we classify anyone over 60 as an elder, and the penalties for crimes against elders is significantly enhanced. And the reason is because people are so much more susceptible to deception and undue influence and a number of different factors that we address and we acknowledge when it's in a victim standpoint. But for some reason, we don't apply those same standards to elected officials. So it's a very strange dichotomy between what we all understand is actually going on with us as we age, versus also respecting the fact that there are some people that are still able to be in those positions later on. But like the old saying goes, politicians are like diapers. They should be changed often. Judges, after a certain number of term limits, it's perfectly fine to say, hey, you know what, you've run 3-4 times. You've done great for your career, but it's time for you to move on and time for us to move in the next generation of folks. And I don't, yeah, exactly. I don't think that there's fundamentally any problem with term limits, really for any position, especially one where you're accountable to the public.
There's two sets of individuals that is not going to go away: homelessness and veterans. Okay, so what impact has homelessness has on our court system, and what can the courts do better to assist veterans who become involved in the justice system?
So working backwards with veterans in the justice system, that starts with prosecutors and defense attorneys, and really getting to know your client, really getting to know your victims, really getting to know everyone and determining, hey, is this someone who could benefit from the substantial amount of resources that we dedicate to veterans? I, as a prosecutor, I may be unusual in that I actively look for that, because I've had more than enough cases where something that presents initially as a terrible crime is usually the result of post-traumatic stress disorder, and you can see it when it happens. You see it from the facts, and and then you ask, hey, is your guy a veteran? Can you ask him of that? And then usually, yes. Okay, well, let's look at something for you, because there are a lot of programs to help you out.
Veterans Court then?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen it work great results with a lot of veterans that have snapped and just gone from absolutely law-abiding and everything's perfectly normal, and then suddenly a crime spree of some nature, and you just see it over and over. And then they go to the Veterans Court, they get the help that they need, that they probably didn't realize even existed, and that sadly they had to commit a crime first to be even able to avail themselves of. So, huge proponent of Veterans Court. And as far as homelessness goes, such a difficult issue. We have so many programs that are designed to help people with addiction issues, but not so many programs that are helping people with homelessness issues. You can send people to West Care if they have a drug problem, and that gives them a temporary home in an inpatient facility while they're recovering, but that assumes that there's a drug problem. Or you can send them to mental health court with an inpatient issue. And again, you're solving maybe one of the symptoms, but ultimately we don't have a great system for helping just the homeless and addressing that issue. So that is, I don't think, as much a court issue as it is a legislative issue. I think that's something that the Nevada legislature needs to get involved in and recognize that gap in our services and get something that the judges and the prosecutors and the defense attorneys can actively push for if it's going to help people.
Sorry, I just want to piggyback on what you just said. When a homeless person decides to rather be in jail than be on the street, that there's a problem.
Back to Veterans Court for a second. Is that something, if the attorneys don't bring that up, you as the judge, can you bring that up and suggest Veterans Court or ask them if they're veterans, or do you have to wait for the attorneys to bring that to your attention?
It can be something that the judge finds out on their own.
Is it a law though?
I'm sorry, which part?
What she just said.
Because I've seen those signs, because we've been observing in most of these courtrooms, and I have noticed many times where there's a sign and it says, if you are a veteran, tell the judge.
Yes.
But if both sides, if no one brings it up, is that something that you're able to bring up as a judge and say, hey, are you a veteran? Are we going to consider, or is that some kind of bias that you're not able to do that?
No, not at all. That's that happens most often. Sometime, how to describe it? So if a case is bad enough to get up into district court, then more than likely the defense and the defendant are going to go to the Department of Parole and Probation. They fill out a pre-sentence investigation report. They sit down with the Department of Parole and Probation and go through an entire biography so that they learn everything about them. So those officers go through and ask them, are you a veteran? Where did you serve? What did you do? Tell me more about your service. So then by the time it gets to the judge for sentencing, the judge will have been made aware of that. And the judges usually catch that and say, hey, I noticed you're a veteran and nobody applied you for Veterans Court. What was the reason? Did you apply and you were rejected? What's going on here? So they have that ability to drill down. And at the justice court level, if it's misdemeanor type things, normally they don't have that kind of deep investigation. So the justice court judges handle that more directly.
People ask us all the time about party affiliation. And, some people say, I want to know if they're a Republican because I'm not going to vote for them if they're not. And, same in reverse. And it seems like such a big deal to people about party affiliation. And I try to explain, then it's a nonpartisan, that doesn't play into decisions. But people can't sometimes grasp that. They think that party affiliation is going to either make you a good judge or a bad judge. So when people bring that up to you, because I'm sure they have along the campaign trail, you've been campaigning for a while, what do you say to people when political affiliation is brought up?
So when I talk about political affiliation with really anybody, I kind of go back to the analogy that I was talking about earlier. This is a job that is supposed to be completely divorced from politics, and it exists to be divorced from politics. And as a district court judge, the number of things that you encounter that have really any political bent is exceptionally minimal. Even when it comes down to things that you might think fundamentally, well, a Republican judge is going to be tough on crime and a Democratic judge is going to be soft on crime. That's not true. And like I'd said, from back behind the bench, when I watch other judges exercise their discretion in certain ways, you would watch Judge X do something over and over and over that would make you think, oh, this is definitely a Republican judge. Not at all. Or this is definitely a Democratic judge. No, not at all. It's up to that individual person deciding whether they're going to go one way or another under the way that they view the facts of the case. So it's supposed to be apolitical. It's supposed to not be a part of the process. But the most important thing overall is that, do you feel that this person has within their heart the ability to do the right thing and a desire to do the right thing? What's their background like? What have they done with their lives? Can you identify with that person, and can you see yourself in that person's shoes? And if that's someone that you really feel like, hey, you know what? I feel like I've got a friend on the bench. I feel like you're the person that I can connect with and I can talk to, and someone who's actually going to hear what I have to say and who actually cares. That's more important than any sort of political position that you could ever take. For me, I've had many different jobs. I've moved all over the place. I've lived in just about every state on the West Coast. Chances are, if someone's done a certain job, I've done that too. Chances are, if someone's lived somewhere, I've been there too. So, you have to have that kind of connection with the people that are in front of you and truly care about their well-being. My first career in hotel management was saving jobs and saving, the people that owned these hotels, and they had their livelihoods threatened because their businesses were failing. And I went into it to help because I cared about these people's livelihoods. I cared about the people that I worked with, my coworkers. I want to make sure that they had, food on their tables and, a job to come home to in the morning. So I know what that's like, and I have that real world experience. And I think that it comes across when you talk to someone. You can get the idea of if this person is real or not, and this person is actually having a conversation with you. You can tell whether someone actually has the empathy for you because they've been there. So that's kind of why I say that politics for this particular position don't really matter. It's, do you see yourself in that person? And if you do, and if we've had the chance to talk, probably we're going to have something in common.
Have you been endorsed by Culinary?
By Culinary? No, surprisingly.
Did you ask them?
I did. I was very shocked at that because I was a culinary worker for over a decade. I worked my way up from bussing tables to, running the hotels. And I made it clear to them that, hey, look, I'm here for you guys. I've always been here for the employees. I'm here for several different reasons. And it's to be a judge for the community and to be a judge for the people.
This is my last question for you for today.
Yes.
Why do you want to leave the prosecution office and become a judge?
Because I think that we need better judges. We have had a run of judges who are very plainly engaging in judicial activism and just not following the law. Judges who are proud that they do whatever they want and that they are their own island and aren't accountable to anyone. And as a practitioner, that scares me, and as a prosecutor, that offends me. And I love my job. I love being a litigator. I love being a trial attorney. But I think that we can do better, and I think that we deserve better, and I think that Clark County deserves judges who truly understand the law and are actually devoted to service beyond self. That's why I'm running, is because I think that I can be the best at this.
Ms. Phillips, you have anything else, Mr. Beaumont?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ms. Beaumont, thank you so much for coming on the show. Mark is going to zoom in on you. This is your time to the last word. You could say, come to my event, come vote for me. Whatever you want to say, direct them to your website, give them your point of contact, tell them to write you a check, whatever.
Yeah.
All right, so my
Donations.
website is austin4judge.com. Let's see, my Instagram handle is austin beaumont4judge. My Facebook is austin4judge, and my TikTok is austin4judge. Just to sum it up, vote for better, vote for Beaumont. I'm here for you. I'm here for everyone who lives here in this county and everyone who feels that they've, got something more to give and that can do better for others. And that's what I truly believe, is that I'm here to do the best possible thing I can and to do right by everyone in the best way that I can. I think that I can help the community more as a judge than I can as a prosecutor. Either way, I'm here to help.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Beaumont. Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Folks, that's Austin Beaumont. He's running for Clark County District Court, Judge Department 8. Mr. Beaumont has been endorsed by 3 veteran organizations that we know of, Veterans in Politics International, Nevada Veterans Association, and the Armed Forces Chamber. We encourage everybody, and I say everybody, to go to the voting booth and vote for Mr. Beaumont and put him on the bench. This is Steve Sanson, Stephanie Phillips with Veterans in Politics. Until next time.
Join us every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, live stream on Facebook.